Teaching flirtation should have been simple. A transaction, a temporary arrangement between strangers who would never see each other again. But when the Alpha King of Valdris chose me from the crowd of desperate, discarded women at the servants' auction, I knew something was terribly wrong. He could have hired any courtesan in the 5 kingdoms, any trained seductress, any woman with a silver tongue and willing hands. Instead, he wanted me. A disgraced voice witch who could barely speak above a whisper. I stood before him in his private study, my throat tight with the binding that had silenced me for 3 long years. "Teach me to make a woman desire me," he said, his pale eyes cold as winter stone. "Teach me the words, the gestures, the art of seduction, and I will restore everything you have lost." The terms were simple. I would coach him. He would practice on me. Neither of us would develop feelings. Neither of us would cross the line between instruction and intimacy. But the first time his fingers tilted my chin upward, the first time his lips brushed against my ear as he whispered the words I had taught him, I understood the terrible truth. He was not learning to seduce anyone else. He was only learning to seduce me. And despite every warning screaming in my blood, despite knowing what happened to the last man who fell under my spell, I was already falling for him in return. Neither of us understood how dangerous that would become. The servants' auction was where you went when no one else would have you. Not the grand marriage markets where noble daughters preened in silk and pearls. Not the courtesan houses where beautiful women learned to weaponize desire. This was the bottom, the gutter. The place where the broken and the shamed stood on wooden platforms and prayed someone would find them useful enough to feed. Seren kept her hood pulled low, her hands clasped tight beneath her cloak. Around her, the other women shifted nervously. A widow with hollow cheeks. A former lady's maid dismissed for theft she swore she did not commit. A young Omega with a swollen belly and no mate to claim her. And Seren, once the daughter of Lord Corvinus of Ashenmoor, once celebrated across 3 kingdoms for a voice so beautiful it could make grown men weep. Once betrothed to a young nobleman who had called her his nightingale, his treasure, his forever. Now she was nothing. The binding around her throat pulsed faintly, a constant reminder of what she had lost. She could still speak, technically, but only in whispers. Anything louder, anything that carried the resonance that had once made her voice magical, triggered pain so sharp it stole her breath entirely. Her father had made certain of that. The auctioneer droned through his list, describing each woman's skills with the enthusiasm of a merchant selling bruised fruit. This one can mend clothing. This one knows herbal remedies. This one is trained in childcare, suitable for nursemaid work. He reached Seren and hesitated. "This one," he said slowly, glancing at his notes, "is literate, trained in etiquette and noble customs, suitable for household management or companion work." Companion work. A polite way of saying no one knew what else to do with her. The crowd murmured. A few merchants leaned forward, assessing. One man with small, greedy eyes let his gaze travel down her cloaked form in a way that made her skin crawl. "Remove the hood," someone called out. "Let us see her face." Seren's pulse spiked. Her face was not the problem. It was her forehead. The brand burned there 3 years ago, marking her as a voice witch whose magic had been bound for crimes against the kingdom. If they saw it, they would know exactly who she was, what she had been accused of. And no one would hire a woman suspected of seducing a man to his death. "I said remove it," the merchant with greedy eyes insisted. He stepped closer to the platform. "I will not buy goods I cannot inspect." The auctioneer shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, the woman has requested—" "I do not care what she requested." His hand reached for her hood. And then the doors exploded open. Not literally, but the force of the presence that swept through them might as well have been a physical blow. Every conversation stopped. Every head turned. Even the merchant stumbled backward, his hand falling away from Seren as if burned. An alpha. No, not just an alpha. The Alpha King of Valdris. Seren felt him before she saw him. The dominance rolled through the auction hall like a winter storm, pressing against her chest, making it difficult to breathe. This was not ordinary alpha power. This was something ancient, something pure, the kind of bloodline that existed more in legend than in living flesh. King Calder of Valdris walked into the hall as if he owned it, which, she supposed, he did. He was tall. That was her first coherent thought. Taller than any man present, broad-shouldered beneath a coat of midnight black, his dark hair swept back from a face that looked carved from pale marble. High cheekbones, a jaw sharp enough to cut glass, and eyes the color of a frozen lake, gray and clear and utterly, completely empty. The whispers started immediately. The king? Here? Impossible. Why would he come to a servants' auction? Perhaps he needs maids for the palace. The king does not personally hire maids. Calder ignored them all. His gaze swept across the platform, passing over each woman with no more interest than if they were furniture. The widow, the maid, the pregnant Omega. Then his eyes stopped on Seren. She felt the weight of that gaze like a physical touch. Cold, assessing, seeing straight through the heavy fabric of her hood to something beneath. The silence stretched, and then, with a voice as cold and certain as a winter execution, the Alpha King spoke. That one, I will take her. The hall erupted. Your Majesty, surely you cannot mean. She has not even shown her face. There are far better candidates, if you would only— I said I will take her. Calder's voice did not rise. It did not need to. The words cut through the chaos like a blade through silk, and every protest died mid-breath. He was already walking toward the platform, the crowd parting before him like water before the prow of a ship. Seren stood frozen, unable to move, unable to think. Why her? She was hooded, silent, visibly damaged goods. There were beautiful women in this room, talented women. Women who could speak above a whisper and did not carry the brand of a bound witch on their foreheads. Why would a king who could have anyone choose the one woman hiding everything? Calder stopped directly in front of her. Up close, she could see the details the distance had hidden. A small scar at the corner of his left eye. The faint shadows beneath his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. And that cold, cold gaze that revealed absolutely nothing. You will come with me, he said. It was not a question. Seren's voice emerged as barely a breath. Why me? A shadow passed behind those frozen eyes. Not warmth, not interest, something else entirely. Because you are exactly what I need. He turned and walked away, clearly expecting her to follow. And despite every instinct screaming that this was a trap, that kings did not choose hooded women from servant auctions without reason, that she was walking straight into danger she could not begin to understand. Seren followed. Because whatever waited for her with the Alpha King could not possibly be worse than what waited for her without him. Or so she desperately hoped. The palace of Valdris rose against the evening sky like a fortress of ice and stone. Seren pressed her hands together beneath her cloak, trying to stop them from shaking as the carriage rolled through gates guarded by soldiers in silver armor. She had grown up in a noble house. She had attended royal functions, danced in grand ballrooms, dined with princes and foreign dignitaries. But this was different. This was the seat of the most powerful Alpha King in 5 kingdoms, a man whose bloodline stretched back to the first pack. A man rumored to be so cold that even his own advisors feared to meet his eyes, and he had chosen her. For reasons she could not begin to fathom. The carriage stopped. A footman opened the door and offered his hand with a bow so deep it bordered on reverence. My lady, His Majesty awaits you in the study. My lady, as if she were still someone worthy of the title. Seren took his hand and stepped down onto smooth flagstones. The palace loomed above her, windows glowing with warm light that seemed at odds with everything she knew about the king who ruled within. She was escorted through corridors that seemed endless, marble floors, tapestries depicting ancient hunts and battles. Servants who bowed as she passed, their expressions curious but not cruel. No one sneered at her. No one whispered behind their hands. It was so different from the 3 years she had spent in her father's house, treated as a prisoner in all but name, that she felt almost dizzy. The guard stopped before a heavy oak door and knocked twice. "Enter." The voice from within was the same as before, cold, controlled, empty of anything resembling warmth. The door swung open, and Seren stepped inside. The study was smaller than she expected. Shelves lined with books. A massive desk covered in maps and documents. A fire burning in the hearth despite the mild autumn evening. And standing beside the window, his back to her, was King Calder. He did not turn immediately. Seren had the sense he was composing himself, preparing, though for what she could not imagine. When he finally faced her, his expression revealed nothing. "Remove your hood." Seren inhaled sharply. "Your Majesty, I have already purchased your contract. Whatever you are hiding, it is now my concern, not yours." His tone brooked no argument. "Remove it." Her hands shook as she reached up. This was it. The moment he saw the brand, he would know. He would realize what he had bought. And then, she pushed the hood back. Cool air touched her face. Her dark hair tumbled free around her shoulders. And there, stark against the pale skin of her forehead, was the cross-shaped scar. The mark of a bound witch. She waited for the disgust, the horror, the immediate summons of guards to drag her away. But Calder's expression did not change. He studied her face for a long moment. The brand. Her eyes. Her lips. Then he nodded once, as if confirming something he had already suspected. "Good," he said simply. Seren stared at him. "Good? I knew what you were before I chose you." He moved toward his desk, gesturing for her to sit in the chair across from it. "A voice witch, bound 3 years ago for allegedly seducing Lord Harlan Voss to madness and death. Daughter of Lord Corvinus of Ashenmore, once considered the most enchanting voice in the Western Kingdoms." Every word was a blade. Seren sank into the chair, her legs no longer trustworthy. "If you knew," she whispered, "why choose me?" Calder sat across from her, his movements precise, economical. "Because I do not need your voice, Lady Seren. I need your knowledge." "My knowledge?" "You were trained from childhood in the art of captivation, not just through magic, but through words, gestures, the subtle mechanics of attraction." His pale eyes fixed on hers. "You know how to make someone want you, how to make them feel desired in return." Serene's brow furrowed. "Your Majesty, forgive me, but you are the Alpha King. Women must throw themselves at you daily." "They do." "Then what could you possibly need from me?" For the first time, a flicker of something crossed that frozen face, something almost like shame. "I feel nothing for them," he said in a low voice. "I feel nothing for anyone. I never have." The confession hung in the air between them. "My bloodline carries a curse," Calder continued. "The kings of Valdris are frozen inside. We cannot feel desire, cannot feel attraction, cannot feel the pull that makes a man pursue a woman or fight for her heart." His jaw tightened. "We can perform the motions, speak the words, but there is no warmth behind them, no truth. And every woman who has ever spent time with me has sensed it." Seren's mind raced. "But you are mated. You must have—" "I am not mated." The words came out sharp. "My father died before he could secure my marriage. And now I have until my 30th birthday, 7 months from now, to find a mate and produce an heir." If I fail, the crown passes to my cousin, a man who would destroy everything my family has built. He leaned forward slightly, and Seren caught a hint of desperation beneath that icy control. I do not need to feel desire, Lady Seren. I need to fake it. Convincingly. I need to learn the words that make women feel wanted, the touches that spark attraction, the art of seduction that comes naturally to others but has always been denied to me. Seren understood now, the pieces clicking into place. You want me to teach you to flirt? Yes. To seduce? Yes. To make a woman fall in love with you, even though you cannot love her back. Something stirred behind his eyes. Pain, perhaps, or resignation. Yes. Seren should have refused. This was dangerous. A bound witch in the palace of an alpha king, teaching him to manipulate women's hearts? If anyone discovered her identity, her purpose here, she would be executed. And worse, she knew what happened when men fell under her influence. She knew exactly how badly this could end. But then she thought of the alternative. Going back to her father. Being sold at that auction to the merchant with greedy eyes, spending the rest of her life as a slave, or worse. What do I receive in return? She heard herself ask. Calder's eyes met hers. Complete your task successfully. Help me secure a mate before my birthday, and I will unbind your voice. He paused. I will also clear your name of the charges against you and restore your family's honor. Seren's throat tightened. Her voice, her name, everything that had been stolen from her. You can do that? I am the king. It was not arrogance, simply fact. I can do whatever I wish. She should ask more questions, should demand guarantees, contracts, witnesses, but the hope blooming in her chest was too powerful to contain. I accept. Calder nodded. Good. We begin tomorrow. Every evening, you will come to my private chambers. You will teach me the mechanics of attraction, and I will practice on you until the technique is perfected. Practice on her. The words sent a strange shiver down her spine. I must warn you, Calder added, rising to indicate the meeting was over. I cannot feel anything. Do not expect warmth from me. Do not expect kindness or affection. I am offering you a transaction, nothing more. Seren rose as well, steadying herself. I understand, Your Majesty. But as she turned to leave, she saw something that made her pause. His hand, resting on the desk, was shaking almost imperceptibly. For a man who claimed to feel nothing, that seemed like quite a lot of something. She wondered if he was lying, or if he simply did not know himself as well as he believed. The chambers they gave her were finer than anything Seren had occupied in 3 years. A canopied bed draped in deep blue silk. A fireplace already burning with fragrant applewood. A wardrobe filled with gowns that fit her perfectly, as if someone had known her measurements before she arrived. Which, she realized, someone probably had. The Alpha King did not seem like a man who left things to chance. The servants who attended her were polite, efficient, and carefully incurious. They bathed her in rose-scented water, brushed her hair until it gleamed, and dressed her in a simple but elegant gown of deep green. No one asked about the brand on her forehead. No one stared. It was kindness, Seren realized. Orchestrated, deliberate kindness, and she did not know what to make of it. She had just finished her breakfast the next morning when a knock came at her door. Enter, she whispered, her voice still that frustrating rasp that was all the binding allowed. The door opened and Seren's blood turned to ice. Petra. Her sister stood in the doorway, beautiful as ever in a gown of pale rose. Her golden hair was swept up in an elaborate style, and jewels glittered at her throat. She looked every inch the respectable lady she had become, and her eyes were filled with cold fury. So it is true, Petra said. You are here, in the palace, near the king. Seren rose slowly, her fingers unsteady. Petra, I did not expect. What are you doing here? Her sister stepped inside and closed the door behind her. Have you not destroyed enough? Must you ruin this family's last chance at respectability as well? I was hired. The king chose me himself. Chose you? Petra laughed bitterly. For what? What could you possibly offer that hundreds of other women could not? Seren hesitated. The truth would only make things worse. I am serving as an etiquette advisor. Nothing more. Etiquette. Petra's voice dripped with disbelief. You, the woman who seduced my betrothed to madness. I did not. He was obsessed with you. Petra stepped closer, her voice shaking. He stopped eating. Stopped sleeping. He could not think of anything but your voice. Your face. And then he walked into the river and drowned himself because he could not have you. The words struck like physical blows. Seren had heard them before, countless times, but they never hurt less. I did not use magic on him, she whispered. My voice was already bound when he... Lies. Petra's hand shot out and gripped Seren's wrist painfully. Father saw what you were. Mother saw it too, before she died of shame. You are poison, Seren. Everything you touch, you destroy. Seren pulled her wrist free, her breath ragged. I came here to rebuild my life, she said. Not to harm anyone. If you cannot believe that, then believe this. I will complete my service to the king, and then I will leave. You will never see me again. Something shifted in Petra's eyes, not sympathy, but perhaps a reluctant acceptance. See that you do. Her sister moved toward the door. Because if you bring scandal upon this family again, if you damage my husband's position at court or put my children's futures at risk, I will personally ensure you are thrown back into that auction hall. Or worse. She left without another word. Seren stood alone in the beautiful chamber, breathing hard, fighting the tears that burned behind her eyes. Her father. Her sister. Everyone who should have loved her believed she was a monster. And perhaps she was. After all, Lord Harlan Voss had died. Whatever the truth of how it happened, he had died, and she had been the last person he spoke of before walking into that river. Some stains did not wash clean, no matter how hard you scrubbed. That evening, Seren attended her first court dinner as the king's etiquette advisor. The great hall blazed with candlelight. Long tables groaned under platters of roasted meats, honeyed vegetables, and delicate pastries. Nobles in silks and velvets mingled with foreign dignitaries, their voices creating a constant hum of conversation and laughter. Seren sat at a lower table, deliberately placed far from the king's dais. She was grateful for the anonymity. The fewer people who looked closely at her, the better. But anonymity, it seemed, was not in her future. You there? A woman's voice, sharp and demanding. The advisor. Seren looked up to find a lady in crimson silk approaching her table. Beautiful, haughty, clearly someone of importance. Lady Helvia. Someone murmured nearby. The king's cousin's wife. The king's cousin. The man who would inherit if Calder failed to find a mate. Helvia stopped before Seren, her eyes sweeping over her with open disdain. So you are the mysterious woman the king brought from the servants' auction. Her lip curled. How utterly peculiar. Tell me, what exactly do you advise him on? How to select produce? How to scrub floors? Scattered laughter from the nearby nobles. Seren rose slowly, keeping her expression neutral. I advise His Majesty on matters of etiquette and social custom, my lady. Etiquette. Helvia's eyebrows rose. From a woman who arrived at court in a servant's hood? How delightfully absurd. More laughter. Seren felt heat climbing her cheeks. Tell me something, Helvia continued, stepping closer. Why do you speak so quietly? Is it an affectation? Or is there something wrong with your throat? The question was designed to humiliate, to force Seren to either explain her binding or admit to some other weakness. But before she could respond, another voice cut through the tension. Lady Seren speaks softly because she understands that true wisdom does not need to shout. The hall went silent. King Calder stood at the edge of the gathering, a goblet of wine in his hand, his pale eyes fixed on Helvia with an expression of absolute cold. "In my court," he continued, his voice carrying effortlessly despite its quietness, "we listen carefully when wisdom speaks. Perhaps you might benefit from the practice, Lady Helvia." The noblewoman's face flushed crimson. She opened her mouth, closed it, then dropped into a curtsy so stiff it was nearly an insult. "Of course, Your Majesty. Forgive me." Calder's gaze dismissed her without acknowledgement. He turned to the gathered nobles. "Lady Seren is my personal advisor. You will treat her with the same respect you would show any member of my household. Is that understood?" Murmured assent rippled through the hall. Calder did not look at Seren again. He simply returned to his seat on the dais and resumed his conversation with a foreign ambassador as if nothing had happened. But Seren stood frozen, something warm and unfamiliar blooming in her chest. He had defended her, publicly, against his own cousin's wife. Why? She was nothing to him. A tool, a transaction. He had said so himself. And yet, the rest of the dinner passed in a blur. Seren ate without tasting, spoke when spoken to without hearing her own words. She was too busy replaying that moment, analyzing it, trying to understand what it meant. When the meal finally ended and she could slip away, she moved quickly through the corridors toward her chambers. She was nearly there when a hand caught her elbow. She spun, her pulse racing, but it was only a servant, a young man with a nervous expression, holding out a folded piece of paper. "For you, my lady, delivered just now." He pressed it into her palm and hurried away before she could ask questions. Serene unfolded the note with unsteady fingers. The handwriting was elegant, formal, and instantly recognizable. "I know what you are. I know what you did. Leave the palace before dawn, or I will expose everything to the king. Your loving father." The paper fell from her numb fingers. Her father was here, in the palace, watching her. And if he revealed the truth? If he told the king that she had not merely been bound for her magic but accused of murder, everything would be over. Her chance at freedom, her restored name, her voice, everything. Seren leaned against the cold stone wall, her breath coming in sharp gasps. She had thought she had escaped him. Thought the auction, the king, this strange new arrangement would finally set her free. But her father had always known how to find her, and he had never, ever let her go. Seren did not leave before dawn. She sat awake through the night, staring at her father's note until the words blurred, then burned it in the fireplace and watched the ashes crumble to nothing. Running would confirm her guilt. It would prove everything her father had ever said about her. And more importantly, it would mean surrendering the only chance she might ever have to reclaim her voice, her name, her life. So she stayed. When the summons came that evening, a politely worded request for her presence in the king's private study, Seren dressed carefully in a gown of midnight blue and made her way through the palace corridors with her chin held high. If her father wanted to destroy her, he would have to do it while she looked him in the eye. The guard outside the study announced her, and Seren stepped inside. Calder stood by the window, as he had the day before. But something was different tonight. His posture was stiffer, his jaw tighter. And when he turned to face her, she noticed the shadows beneath his eyes had deepened. "You came," he said. "Did you expect me not to?" "I expected nothing." He gestured to a chair near the fire. "Sit. We have work to do." Seren sat, arranging her skirts carefully. Her breath was coming too fast, and she forced herself to breathe slowly, evenly. This was a transaction. Nothing more. Calder moved to stand before her, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. This near, she could smell him. Cedar and frost. An impossible combination that should not have worked together but somehow did. "Where do we begin?" he asked. Seren considered the question. She had spent years learning the art of captivation, both through her natural magic and through deliberate study. Breaking it down into teachable components felt almost impossible. But she had to try. Flirtation, she said, is about attention. Making someone feel like they are the only person in the room, the only person who matters. Calder's expression did not change. "Continue." "It starts with eye contact, not staring. That makes people uncomfortable. But looking at someone as if you find them genuinely fascinating, as if you cannot quite believe they exist." She rose from her chair, moving to stand before him at a more equal distance. "Look at me," she instructed. "Not through me, not past me, at me." Calder's pale eyes fixed on hers. The air stilled in Serene's lungs. There was something unsettling about being the focus of that gaze. It was like standing in the path of an avalanche, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. "Good," she managed. "Now soften it slightly. You are not interrogating me. You are appreciating me." His expression shifted almost imperceptibly. The intensity remained, but the edge dulled. His gaze dropped briefly to her lips, then rose again to her eyes. Serene's cheeks flushed without her permission. "Like that," she whispered. "Yes, exactly like that." Calder tilted his head slightly. "You are blushing." "I am demonstrating the effectiveness of the technique." "Are you?" The ghost of something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. It vanished so quickly she almost thought she had imagined it. "What comes next?" he asked. Seren stepped back, needing the distance. Her pulse raced in a way that had nothing to do with fear. "Touch," she said. "Small touches. Incidental contact that could be accidental but is not. A hand on someone's arm. Fingers brushing against fingers. Nothing overt. Nothing that could be rejected outright." Calder extended his hand toward her. "Show me." She hesitated. Then, slowly, she placed her fingers against his forearm. The contact was electric. His skin was cool. Unnaturally so, just as it had been in the auction hall. But beneath the coldness, she felt something else. A faint tremor. A barely perceptible tension that suggested his control was not as absolute as he pretended. "Like this," Seren said, her voice barely audible. She let her fingers drift upward, tracing the line of his sleeve toward his elbow. Light, brief, leaving them wanting more. Calder's breath hitched. The sound was so small she almost missed it. But she was trained to notice these things, trained to read the tiny signals that revealed what people truly felt beneath their masks. "You felt that," she said. His jaw tightened. "I felt your hand on my arm." "No. You felt something more." "I saw it." For a long moment he did not respond. Then, so softly she had to lean closer to hear, he said, "That is impossible, I told you. I cannot feel." "Perhaps you have simply never been taught what to feel for." The words hung between them, dangerous and weighted with implication. Calder stepped back abruptly. "That is enough for tonight." "Your Majesty." "I said enough." His voice was sharper than she had heard it before. Not angry, exactly, but rattled, as if she had touched something he had spent years burying. Seren knew she should apologize, should retreat, should remember that this man held her future in his hands and could destroy her with a single word. Instead, she asked, "Why did you defend me tonight, at dinner, against Lady Helvia?" Calder froze. "You said I am a transaction," Seren continued, "a tool. But tools do not require public defense. They do not require kindness. It was not kindness." "Then what was it?" He turned to face her, and for just a moment, the mask slipped. She saw something raw beneath it. Something wounded. I do not know, he admitted. And that disturbs me more than you can possibly understand. He moved to the door and pulled it open. Tomorrow evening. Same time. Do not be late. Seren walked past him into the corridor, her thoughts churning. At the doorway she paused. Your Majesty, she whispered. Whatever you believe about yourself, whatever this curse has told you that you are, I do not think you are as frozen as you claim. She did not wait for his response. But as she walked away, she heard the door close behind her with far more force than necessary, and she wondered if she had just made a terrible mistake, or finally cracked the ice around a heart that had been waiting to thaw. The lessons continued. Every evening, Seren reported to the king's private study. Every evening they practiced the mechanics of seduction, eye contact, touch, conversation, the art of the meaningful pause. And every evening something shifted between them. It was subtle at first, a longer glance, a touch that lingered a half-second too long. Questions that strayed from technique into territory that felt dangerously personal. Tell me about your voice, Calder said one night, 3 weeks into their arrangement. Before it was bound. What was it like? Seren looked up from the book she had been consulting, a treatise on courtship customs in the southern kingdoms. Why do you want to know? Call it curiosity. She studied his face, searching for mockery or manipulation. She found neither. It was everything, she said finally. When I sang, people stopped what they were doing. They forgot to breathe. Some of them wept. I could make someone feel joy or sorrow or longing with nothing but a melody. Voice magic? Yes, though I never learned to control it properly. My father, she hesitated. He did not approve of magical training. He wanted the gift, but not the discipline that came with it. Calder leaned forward slightly. And the man who died. Lord Voss. Did you use your voice on him? The question should have felt like an accusation. Instead, it felt like an opening. I do not know, Seren admitted. My voice was already bound when he became fixated on me. My father had it done the day I turned 18. He claimed it was for my own protection, but I think he was afraid of what I might become. So you could not have magically seduced Lord Voss. No, and yet he became obsessed regardless. She looked down at her hands. Some have suggested the binding was incomplete, that traces of magic still leaked through. Others believe I simply drove him mad through ordinary means. And what do you believe? Seren met his eyes. I believe that sometimes people become fixated on things they cannot have, and sometimes that fixation destroys them, regardless of magic. Recognition passed across Calder's expression, or perhaps understanding. Yes, he murmured. I suppose it does. The fire crackled in the silence that followed. We should practice, Seren said, rising from her chair. The midwinter ball is in 6 weeks. You will need to be ready. Calder rose as well, but he did not move toward her. Tonight, I want to try something different. Different how? Dancing. Seren blinked. Dancing? It is a common element of courtship, is it not? The closeness, the movement, the excuse to hold someone without impropriety. He was not wrong, but the thought of being held by him, moving with him, their bodies pressed close. I am not certain that is wise, she whispered. Why not? Because I am already too aware of you. Because your hands have not left my thoughts since the first time you touched me. Because I am in danger of forgetting that this is a transaction. She did not say any of that. Instead, she said, There is no music. Calder moved to a cabinet in the corner and opened it to reveal a small music box. When he wound it, a delicate melody filled the room, slow, haunting, and beautiful. There is now. He extended his hand. Seren knew she should refuse, knew that dancing with him in private, in firelight, to music that sounded like longing given form, was a line she should not cross. She took his hand anyway. He drew her close with surprising gentleness. One hand settled at the small of her back. The other clasped her fingers, cool and steady. They began to move. Calder was a skilled dancer. She should have expected that from a king trained in every courtly art. But there was something else in the way he moved. A fluidity that belied his rigid public demeanor. A grace that made her feel as if she were floating. "You are trembling," he observed. "Am I?" "Yes." His hand pressed more firmly against her back, steadying her. "Why?" "Because you are holding me like I matter. Because your eyes have not left my face since we started dancing. Because I can feel your heart beating against my chest, and it is racing just as fast as mine." "I am cold," she lied. "You are a terrible liar." His voice was low, almost amused. And when she looked up at him, she saw something in his expression that had not been there before. Warmth. Faint. Flickering. Like a candle flame struggling to survive in a winter wind. But warm, nonetheless. "Calder," she whispered, forgetting his title in her shock. He went still. "Say that again." "Your Majesty, No. My name. Say it again." His voice was rough, almost desperate, and his eyes, those frozen gray eyes, were burning. "Calder," she breathed. His hand tightened on her back. His head dipped lower, his forehead nearly touching hers. "No one calls me that," he said, barely above a whisper. "Not since my mother died. Not ever." "Why not?" "Because it makes me feel something." His breath ghosted across her lips. "And I was taught that feeling was weakness." Seren's chest was tight with emotion. They had stopped dancing. They were simply standing now, pressed together, breathing the same air. "Is it?" she whispered. "Weakness? I thought so." His thumb traced a slow circle against her back. "I am no longer certain." The music box wound down, its melody fading into silence. Neither of them moved. "I should go," Seren said. "Yes," Calder agreed, but his arms did not release her. And her hands remained pressed against his chest, feeling the steady thunder of his heart. "The lessons," she managed. "They are working. You are learning too." "I am not learning anything." His voice was raw. "I am not practicing technique. I am not preparing for the midwinter ball or any other woman." "Then what are you doing?" He pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. "I am falling," he said. "Despite everything I was told was impossible. Despite the curse that should have frozen me completely. I am falling, Seren. And I do not know how to stop." Her breath caught. Before she could respond, before she could process what he had just admitted, he released her and stepped away. "Go," he said hoarsely. "Now, before I do something we will both regret." Seren fled. She made it halfway to her chambers before she had to stop, leaning against the cold stone wall, pressing her hand to her racing heart. He was falling. For her. And the terrible, wonderful, terrifying truth was that she was falling too. She had been falling since the moment he defended her at dinner. Since the moment his hand shook beneath hers. Since the moment he looked at her as if she were something precious rather than something broken. "What have I done?" she whispered to the empty corridor. But she already knew the answer. She had done exactly what she was accused of doing to Lord Harlan Voss. She had made a man fall for her. And this time, the man was a king. The weeks that followed were a kind of exquisite torture. Calder did not speak of his confession again. He did not mention falling. He did not touch her more than the lessons required. But everything had changed. The air between them was charged now, electric with unspoken words. Every accidental brush of fingers sent sparks through her nerve endings. Every time their eyes met, She felt as if she were drowning in gray winter seas. And the worst part, the most terrifying part, was that she did not want to be rescued. She found herself watching him when she should have been teaching, noticing the way his jaw tightened when he was frustrated, the way his eyes softened, almost imperceptibly, when he looked at her, the way he said her name, low and careful, as if it were something fragile he was afraid to break. She was in love with him. The realization struck her one evening as she sat alone in her chambers, staring at the fire without seeing it. She loved him, the cold king who could not feel, the frozen alpha who had hired her for a transaction and somehow become everything she had never dared to want. And she was going to destroy him, because her father was still here, still watching. And the longer she stayed, the greater the danger became. 3 days before the midwinter ball, the danger finally arrived. Lady Seren. The guard's voice was stiff. You have been summoned to the throne room. Seren looked up from her breakfast, her stomach dropping. By whom? His Majesty and... The guard hesitated. Lord Corvinus of Ashenmore. Her father. She rose on legs that felt like water. The walk to the throne room seemed to take hours, each step heavier than the last. When she arrived, the doors were already open. The throne room was vast, its ceiling lost in shadow, its walls lined with the banners of the royal house. At the far end, on a raised dais, sat Calder. His expression was carved from stone, and standing before him, dressed in the formal robes of a lord, was her father. Lord Corvinus turned as she entered. He was older than she remembered, his hair graying at the temples, his face more lined, but his eyes were the same, cold, calculating, filled with a hatred that had never dimmed. Ah, he said pleasantly, there she is, my wayward daughter. Seren stopped at the edge of the room, unable to move closer. You summoned me, Your Majesty. Calder's gaze flicked to her, then away. Lord Corvinus has made certain allegations. I thought you should have the opportunity to respond. Her father smiled. It was not a kind expression. I have come to warn His Majesty, he said, turning back to the throne, about the woman he has employed. My daughter is not merely a bound voice witch. She is a murderer. The word echoed through the vast chamber. Lord Harlan Voss, her father continued, was betrothed to my younger daughter Petra. He was kind, honorable, destined for greatness. And then my eldest daughter set her sights on him. That is not... Seren began. She seduced him, her father said, his voice rising. Used her magic to cloud his mind, to make him obsessed with her. When he tried to resist, tried to honor his commitment to Petra, she drove him to madness. He walked into the river because he could not live with wanting her and not having her. My magic was already bound, Seren whispered. You bound it yourself. I could not have... The binding was incomplete. Her father's eyes gleamed. That is what the witch who performed it told me afterward. Traces of your power remained, enough to destroy a good man's mind. Seren felt the floor tilt beneath her. The binding, incomplete. All these years she had told herself she was innocent, that she could not have magically seduced Lord Voss because her voice had been silenced. But if traces had remained, if some fragment of her power had leaked through despite everything. Is this true? Calder's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. She looked up at him, at those pale eyes that had grown so much warmer over the past weeks, and felt her heart shatter. I do not know, she admitted. I never learned to control my magic. If traces remained, I would not have known I was using them. She admits it, her father said triumphantly. Your Majesty, this woman is a danger to everyone around her. She must be removed from the palace immediately. Better yet, she should be imprisoned until a proper trial can be... Enough? The single word silenced the room. Calder rose from his throne, In the candlelight, his face was hard as granite, his eyes chips of winter ice. But when he spoke, it was not to her father. "Lady Seren," he said softly, "look at me." She raised her eyes to his. "Did you intend to harm Lord Voss?" "No." "Did you deliberately use magic to seduce him?" "No, I swear it." "Do you believe, in your heart, that you were responsible for his death?" The question pierced straight through her defenses. For 3 years she had asked herself the same thing. For 3 years she had never been able to answer. But standing here, under Calder's steady gaze, she finally knew. "No," she whispered. "I do not believe I killed him. I was angry at him for choosing my sister. I was hurt. But I would never have wanted him dead." Calder nodded slowly. Then he turned to her father. "Lord Corvinus, your allegations are noted. They will be investigated thoroughly. But until evidence is produced beyond your own testimony, Lady Seren remains under my protection." "Your Majesty, you are dismissed." Her father's face purpled with rage, but even he could not argue with a direct command from the Alpha King. He bowed stiffly and swept from the throne room, his robes snapping behind him. The moment the doors closed, Seren's legs gave out. She would have fallen, but Calder was there, moving faster than she had ever seen him move, catching her before she hit the floor. "I have you," he said gently. "I have you." She clung to him, shaking. "Why?" she managed. "Why do you believe me? My own family thinks I am a monster." Calder's arms tightened around her. "Because I know what it is to be accused of coldness you did not choose," he said. "Because I have watched you for weeks, and I know the shape of your heart. And because—" He stopped. "Because what?" Seren whispered. "Because I love you." The words fell between them like stones into still water. Seren pulled back, staring up at him. "What did you say?" "I love you." His voice was raw. "I did not think it possible. I was told it was impossible. But you have undone every certainty I ever had about myself, and I cannot pretend otherwise any longer." Joy flooded through her, bright and overwhelming. "I love you too," she breathed. "I have been falling for weeks. I was afraid to tell you, afraid of what it might mean." She never finished the sentence, because Calder kissed her. It was nothing like the careful touches of their lessons. This was desperate, consuming. A man drowning and finally finding air. His hands tangled in her hair. His lips moved against hers with a hunger that stole her breath. And she kissed him back. For one perfect, shimmering moment, the world was right. Then Calder gasped. He wrenched away from her, his hand flying to his chest. His face had gone white. Not pale, but white. The color of fresh snow. "Calder?" Seren reached for him. "What is wrong?" He stumbled backward, his breathing ragged. "No," he gasped. "No, this cannot." Ice. Seren watched in horror as frost began to spread across his chest, visible even through his shirt. It climbed up his neck, crystallized along his jaw, crept toward his eyes. "The curse," he choked out. "I should have told you. If I ever truly fell in love, if I ever let myself feel—" "What happens?" Seren demanded, grabbing his arms. His skin was freezing. "Calder, what happens?" He looked at her with eyes that were already glazing with frost. "I die." Then he collapsed. And Seren screamed, "Help! Someone help me!" Seren's voice tore from her throat, louder than it had been in 3 years. The binding flared with white-hot pain, but she did not care. She was on her knees beside Calder, her hands pressing against his chest, feeling the unnatural cold spreading beneath her palms. Guards burst through the doors. Servants followed. Within moments, the throne room was chaos. "The king has collapsed. Send for the healers?" "What happened to him?" "Stand back. Everyone stand back." An elderly woman pushed through the crowd, her robes marking her as the palace's chief healer. She knelt beside Calder, her hands moving over his body with practiced efficiency. Then she went still. "This is not illness," she said in a low voice. "This is magic. Old magic. I cannot treat this." "Then find someone who can," Seren demanded. "There must be witches, practitioners, someone." "Voice witches are banned from the capital," a guard said, "by order of the late king." "Then send outside the capital. Send anywhere. Do something." The healer looked at her with sorrowful eyes. "My lady, even if we found a witch powerful enough, the king has hours at most. The ice has already reached his heart." Hours. Seren looked down at Calder's face. His lips were blue. Frost crystals had formed on his eyelashes. He looked like a statue carved from winter itself, beautiful and cold and utterly still. "There must be a way," she whispered. "There must be." "There is." The voice came from the doorway. Seren turned to find an old woman standing there. Small, hunched, with sharp eyes that seemed to see straight through her. "Who are you?" the chief healer demanded. "My name is Thessaly," the old woman said, moving into the room with surprising speed. "I served the king's grandmother as her personal witch before the ban. I have been living in hiding ever since, but the old wards I placed on the palace still hold. They told me the curse had finally awakened." She knelt beside Calder, her gnarled hands hovering over his chest. "I warned them this would happen. I warned them all." "Warn them about what?" Seren asked. "The curse." Thessaly's eyes met hers. "The kings of Valdris carry a bloodline curse placed centuries ago by a scorned witch. They are frozen inside, incapable of feeling love, desire, and true connection. It was meant to be a blessing, a way to ensure rulers who would never be swayed by passion or sentiment." "Some blessing," Seren said bitterly. "Indeed. But the curse has a failsafe. If a king ever manages to feel true love despite the freezing, if something thaws his heart enough for genuine emotion to take root, the curse activates completely. It freezes him entirely, and he dies." Serene's hands tightened on Calder's frozen fingers. "Then how do I stop it?" Thessaly studied her for a long moment. "You are the voice witch, the one he hired to teach him seduction." "Yes. And you love him." It was not a question. "Yes," Seren whispered. "I love him." Thessaly nodded slowly. Voice magic is warmth given form. It carries emotion, passion, the heat of connection between souls. It is the natural opposite of the ice that binds him. She paused. If a voice witch of sufficient power were to sing to him, truly sing with all the love in her heart, she could melt the curse entirely. Hope flared in Seren's chest, then died just as quickly. "My voice is bound," she said. "I cannot sing. I can barely speak above a whisper." "Then you must unbind it." "I do not know how." "The seal. My father holds the seal. He would never—" "Then take it from him." Seren stared at the old witch. "You are the only one who can save him," Thessaly said softly. "The only one whose voice carries enough love to reach through the ice. But you must act quickly. By dawn, it will be too late." By dawn. She had hours, mere hours to confront her father, retrieve the seal, break a binding that had held for 3 years, and somehow learn to use magic she had never been taught to control. It was impossible, but Calder was dying. And impossible had stopped meaning anything the moment she realized she loved him. Serene rose to her feet. "Take care of him," she said to Thessaly. "Keep him alive as long as you can." "Where are you going?" the healer asked. Seren was already moving toward the door. "To get my voice back." The ride through the darkened streets of the capital felt endless. Seren had commandeered a horse from the royal stables, ignoring the protests of the grooms. She rode hard through empty avenues, past shuttered shops and sleeping houses, toward the district where noble visitors kept their townhomes. Her father would be there. He always stayed at the same residence when he visited the capital, the Corvinus family's ancestral property. A cold stone building that matched his cold stone heart. She arrived as the clock tower struck midnight. 12 hours until dawn. 12 hours to save Calder. Seren dismounted and strode toward the door. A servant tried to block her entry. "Lady Seren, your father has retired for the—" She pushed past him. The townhouse was dark except for a single light burning in the study. Seren followed it, her boots echoing on marble floors, her pulse pounding against her ribs. She found her father exactly where she expected, seated behind his desk, a glass of wine in his hand, as if he had been waiting for her. "Ah," Lord Corvinus said pleasantly. "I wondered how long it would take. Give me the seal. No pleasantries? No pretense of filial affection?" He took a sip of wine. "I raised you better than this, Seren." "You did not raise me at all. You imprisoned me, bound me, branded me, and then you sold me at auction like livestock. For your own good. Give me the seal." Her voice cracked, the binding flaring with pain. "The king is dying. My voice can save him. Give me the seal, and I will leave Valdris forever. You will never have to see me again." Her father set down his wineglass. "No." "Father." I said no. He rose from his chair, and in the candlelight his face looked almost demonic. "You think I do not know what you have been doing in that palace? You think I do not have eyes everywhere? You seduced the king himself, Seren. Just as you seduced Harlan Voss. Just as you destroy everything you touch. I did not seduce anyone. I cannot. My voice is bound." "Is it?" Her father's smile was cruel. "Tell me, daughter, did you never wonder why the binding was incomplete? Why traces of your power remained despite everything I paid to have it sealed away?" Seren's blood ran cold. "What are you saying?" "I left the cracks deliberately." Her father moved closer. "Enough to ensure that any man who fell for you would seem enchanted. Enough to guarantee that when something went wrong, and something always goes wrong around you, there would be someone to blame. You framed me." The words came out hollow. "You made sure I would be blamed for anything that happened, and then—" She stopped. The pieces clicked into place with horrible clarity. "You killed him," she breathed. "You killed Harlan Voss." Her father's expression did not change. He was unsuitable. A minor lord with no fortune and romantic notions above his station. Petra deserved better. "So you murdered him? Your own daughter's betrothed?" "I drove him mad." Lord Corvinus said it casually, as if discussing the weather. A few whispered words in the night. A few suggestions planted while he slept. It took less than a week before he walked into that river. Seren felt sick. "You have voice magic," she realized. "That is how— the inheritance. It came from— my mother." Her father's lip curled. "A witch who seduced my father into marriage and contaminated our bloodline with her filth. I discovered my own abilities young, and I learned to hide them, to suppress them, to ensure no one would ever know. But I manifested. You manifested." His voice dripped with hatred. "My greatest shame made flesh, a constant reminder of what I truly am. When Harlan Voss discovered my secret, when he threatened to expose our family's magical heritage, I had no choice. You murdered him, blamed me, destroyed my life to protect yourself. I did what was necessary." A sob tore from Seren's throat, not of grief, but of rage. 3 years. 3 years of believing she might be a monster. 3 years of guilt and shame and isolation, all because her father was too cowardly to face what he was. "Give me the seal," she said, "or I will take it from your corpse." Her father laughed. "You cannot hurt me, Seren. You have no power, no voice, no. She has me. They both spun toward the doorway. Petra stood there, still in her nightclothes, her face pale with horror. Petra, their father said sharply, go back to bed. You killed him. Petra's voice shook. You killed Harlan. I heard everything. You heard nothing. You misunderstood. I heard you confess to murder, Petra screamed. I heard you admit to driving him mad, to framing Seren, to... She choked on a sob. He was going to marry me. I loved him. And you murdered him because he knew your secret? Petra. Where is the seal? Petra demanded. I will not. Petra moved faster than Seren would have believed possible. She crossed the room in 3 strides, seized a heavy candlestick from the mantel, and swung it at their father's head. The crack of impact echoed through the study. Lord Corvinus crumpled to the floor. Silence. The sisters stared at each other across their father's unconscious body. The desk, Petra whispered, her voice unsteady. He keeps important things in the locked drawer. Seren moved. Her hands shook as she searched the drawers, finally finding a small iron box with a rusted lock. She broke it open with a letter opener. Inside, wrapped in velvet, was a small glass vial containing what looked like frozen silver. The seal. Go, Petra said. Save your king. Seren looked at her sister. This woman who had hated her for 3 years, who had believed her a murderer, who had just knocked their father unconscious to help her. Petra. We will talk later. Tears streamed down Petra's face. After you save him. After you fix what father broke. We will talk. And I will apologize for every cruel word I ever said to you. She managed a watery smile. But right now, you need to go. Seren clutched the seal to her chest and ran. Dawn was 2 hours away when Seren burst through the doors of the throne room. Calder lay on a makeshift bed of cloaks and cushions, surrounded by candles that did nothing to warm him. The frost had spread further, covering his entire torso now, creeping up his neck toward his face. His breathing was so shallow she could barely see his chest move. Thessaly looked up as she entered. You have it? Seren held out the vial with unsteady fingers. How do I break it? The old witch took the seal and examined it carefully. This is blood magic, tied to your father's bloodline. She looked at Seren. You will need to break it with your own blood. Tell me how. Thessaly produced a small silver knife. A drop of your blood on the seal. Then speak your true name. Not the name you were given, but the name your soul carries. The one that defines who you truly are. Seren took the knife. Her hands were steady now. The fear had burned away, leaving only determination. She pricked her finger and let a single drop of blood fall onto the vial. The silver liquid inside began to swirl. Now, Thessaly said, your true name. Seren closed her eyes. Who was she? Not Lady Seren of Ashenmoor. That title had been stripped away long ago. Not the bound witch, the accused murderess, the disgraced daughter. Those were names others had given her. Labels meant to diminish and control. Who was she really? She thought of her voice, the gift that had been her glory and her curse, the power to move hearts, to bring tears, to make people feel things they had forgotten they could feel. She thought of Calder, the way he looked at her as if she were sunrise after an endless night, the way he had defended her, trusted her, loved her despite everything. She thought of the woman she wanted to become, strong, free, unashamed, and she knew. Voicebringer, she said. The vial shattered. Power flooded through her like a river breaking through a dam. Her throat burned, then cooled, then burned again. She gasped, staggering as 3 years of suppressed magic roared back to life. Her voice, she could feel it now, not just sound, but warmth. Light. Love, given form. Sing, Thessaly urged. Before it is too late, sing to him. Seren dropped to her knees beside Calder. She took his frozen hand in hers, brought it to her lips, and began to sing. The melody came from somewhere deeper than memory. It was the song her mother had sung to her as a child, a lullaby about spring returning after winter, about ice melting into streams, about warmth finding its way back to frozen hearts. But as she sang, the song became something more. It became her love for him. Every moment they had shared, every touch, every glance, every word spoken in firelight, the way he had chosen her when no one else would, the way he had defended her honor, the way he had shaken beneath her fingers despite claiming to feel nothing. She sang of all of it, and the ice began to melt, slowly at first, a single drop running down his cheek like a tear, then faster. The frost on his chest dissolved into water. The blue faded from his lips. Color returned to his skin. Seren sang until her throat ached, sang until tears streamed down her face, sang until the last trace of ice had vanished and Calder lay before her, pale but breathing, alive. His eyes opened, gray eyes, no longer frozen, gray eyes filled with something warm and wondering and impossibly tender. Seren, he breathed. She collapsed against his chest, sobbing. You were dead, she managed. You were dying, and I could not. I thought I would lose you before I could. His arms came around her, drawing her near. His skin was warm now. Not the unnatural cold she had grown accustomed to, but warm like any other man's. Warm like he was finally, truly, alive. You saved me, he said. I love you. The words poured out between sobs. I love you so much. I could not let you die. I could not. He kissed her. It was different from their first kiss. Softer, slower, tasting of tears and relief, and a joy so overwhelming it hurt. His hands cupped her face as if she were something precious. His lips moved against hers with all the warmth he had spent a lifetime being denied. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Calder pressed his forehead against hers. The curse, he said gently. Is it broken? Thessaly confirmed from somewhere nearby. Completely and utterly broken. Not just for you, Your Majesty, but for your entire bloodline. Any children you have will be free of it. Children. Her chest tightened with emotion. We will have children, she whispered. Children who can feel. Children who will know love. Calder's smile was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. Yes, he said. We will. 3 months later, spring had come to Valdris. The palace gardens exploded with color, roses and lilacs and flowers Seren could not name. Birds sang in the flowering trees. And everywhere she walked, people smiled. So much had changed. Lord Corvinus sat in the royal dungeons, awaiting trial for the murder of Harlan Voss and the false imprisonment of his own daughter. Petra had testified against him, as had the servants who had witnessed his confession. The trial was a formality. Everyone knew the verdict. Petra herself had moved into the palace at Seren's invitation. The sisters were rebuilding their relationship slowly, carefully, one conversation at a time. There was still pain between them, still grief and guilt and years of cruelty to overcome. But there was also hope. And that was enough for now. Thessaly had been appointed as the royal magical advisor. Under her guidance, Calder had lifted the ban on voice witches entirely. An academy was being built in the capital, a place where young witches could learn to control their gifts rather than fear them. And Seren was happy. It was such a simple thing, such an ordinary thing. But after 3 years of darkness, happiness felt like a miracle. She found Calder in their chambers, standing by the window, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and rose. Their chambers. Because they shared them now. Because he refused to sleep without her beside him, and she could not imagine sleeping anywhere else. "You are thinking too hard," she said, slipping her arms around him from behind. He turned in her embrace, holding her close. "I am thinking about you." "Should I be worried?" "Never." He kissed her forehead, her nose, the corner of her mouth. "I was thinking about how close I came to losing you, to never knowing what this felt like." "What does it feel like?" "Warmth." His voice was soft with wonder. "Like standing in sunlight after a lifetime of winter. Like finally coming home." Seren rose on her toes and kissed him properly. When they broke apart, she took his hand and pressed it to her stomach. "Speaking of warmth," she said quietly. Calder went very still. "Are you—" "Yes." His face transformed. Joy bloomed across his features, pure and unrestrained, the kind of joy he had spent a lifetime being unable to feel. "We are having a child." "We are having a child." He swept her into his arms, spinning her around, laughing with a sound that echoed off the walls and filled her heart to bursting. "I love you," he said, setting her down and cradling her face in his hands. "I love you more than I have words to say. You saved my life, Seren. You gave me everything." "You gave me everything too," she whispered. "My voice, my name, my freedom, my future." "Our future. Our future," she agreed. Outside, the sun sank below the horizon. Stars began to appear, one by one, scattered across the darkening sky like diamonds on velvet. Inside, wrapped in each other's arms, the Alpha King and his voice witch watched the night unfold. They had both entered this arrangement seeking escape. Neither had expected love, but love had found them anyway. And in loving each other, they had melted not just a curse, but the walls around two broken hearts. Spring had come to Valdris at last, and it would never be winter again.